This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, welcome back to Principles of Macroeconomics. Happy to have you with us. We're going to be talking about the very first chapter today, which is called the 10 Principles of Economics. The idea of economics is that we are studying um, the relationship between households and businesses. We are studying how the economy works in a very basic sense. We look at the household. The household is the family unit, the place that you live, the people you live with. That's your household. Okay. And the household could be one person, it could be a whole lot of people. In some communities like my community, the Italian American community, there's a lot of us live in the same house. Is and so a lot of people in the household. The household represents um, an economy. Okay, what I mean by that is we have revenue coming into the household. How does that revenue come in? It comes in through a couple different ways. Your employment, your job, you earn money, you earn revenue. Okay, money coming into the household could also be in the form of things like Social Security, um, Medicare, Medicaid benefits, etc. It's resources coming into the household. That's the revenue coming in. And the household also needs to spend money going out for things like utilities, rent or mortgage, uh, groceries, clothing, transportation, etc. Right? So the household, when you look at your house, your living situation, you got money coming in and you got money going out for pretty much everything, right? And so your household represents a small economy. There's an exchange happening for goods and services. The exchange is I live in my house, therefore I pay my rent. That's an exchange. It's housing for rent. uh, Groceries, that's an exchange. It's money for groceries. So if you think about your household is a small economy. Society faces a lot of decisions when it comes to these inputs and outputs. The inputs are the resources that go into your economy, and the outputs are what's being produced. So, this is the very basic foundations of what economics is. In economics, we talk a lot about resources. Resources are pretty scarce. What I mean by that is it's not unlimited. Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited money coming into the house. If we did, we'd all be, pretty well off, but it doesn't work that way. The money coming into the house is done by work, by, producing. So the resources that we have are limited. Therefore, they're what we call scarce. Scarcity represents the limited resources. We cannot continuously produce the goods and services that we need. So the idea behind economics is that we're studying how society as a whole manages these scarce resources. If you think about your employer, for example, you go from your household to your workplace and then back to your household. And you do this pretty regularly, okay? What's happening here is that we're generating resources. You're the employee of the business, which means that you are a resource to the business. You're providing your ability to work. You're a resource to the business. But you're a scarce resource, okay? And then the business gives you scarce resources, which are things like groceries and housing and etc. It's a connected, it's a connected economy. Economists, they study things like how people make decisions, where they work, how much they buy, how much they save, how much people invest. Economists study these things. It's behavioral. A lot of things in economics that you'll find are mostly behavioral. It's the study of human behavior, really. That's the basics behind economics. I'd say it's 80% behavioral, and really only 20% of it is technical. Yeah. Economists look at the way people interact with each other, and they really look at forces at play. Average growth, population factors, people that can't find work, interest rates, inflation rates, etc. All these details are things that economists study. And we look at how people make decisions in economics. There's a couple of principles that we look at when it comes to how people make decisions. And there's 4 of them, of how people make decisions. The first one is what we call people face trade-offs. A trade-off is when we sacrifice one thing over another. For example, you decided to come to class today, which means that you're probably not at work. You might be, but you might not be. That's a trade-off for your time, right? So that's what we look at in principle 1. Principle 2, the cost of something of what you give up to get it. We call that an opportunity cost. For example, you're here in class rather than being at work. The trade-off is your hourly rate, right? What you gave up to get it. Principle 3, rational people think at the margin. What this simply means is that people tend to think at the limit. We always look at limits, right? That's really normal. And principle 4 is that people respond to incentives. If you pay me, I'll do the work. That's an incentive. The pay is an incentive. So those are the 4 principles of how people make decisions. There's another 3 principles about how people interact. Principle 5 is trade can make everyone better off. When we trade with other people, it's usually I'm giving you money, you're giving me a good or a service. Okay, it makes us both better off. That's trade. Principle 6 is markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. If you look at individual marketplaces that we have, you can think of like a store. A store is organized in a certain way. Like if you go to Macy's, for example, you have clothing, you have jewelry, you have home goods, you have etc. They're organized in departments. Each department is its own version of economic activity. You can apply that same type of concept to the greater world. Okay? So different markets could be like exchange markets, etc. Principle 7, governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. I use the word sometimes very loosely here because the government sometimes doesn't do a very good job at this, as I think we know. Okay. Governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. With the inflation rate, for example, when the Federal Reserve decides to turn down the interest rates from the highest they've been in 30 years, when they decide to do that this year, it'll make the market outcomes a little bit better, we think. The last 3 principles we look at are how the economy works as a whole. If you look at the country as a whole, the United States as a country, whole country, we look at the standard of living that we have here. And it really depends on the country's ability to produce goods and services. We call that gross domestic product. country's ability to produce goods and services is gross domestic product. The higher the gross domestic product, the better off the country is. Principle 9, prices rise when the government prints too much money. We all experienced that over the past 3 years. When the pandemic hit, the government printed too much money. Why? Because the government gave everyone subsidies. You got $1,200, a check in the mail for $1,200 for whatever reason. If you needed it, that's good. Also, a lot of people didn't, right? So what I mean by that is when the government prints too much money like that, they're just giving out check after check, it causes inflation. When there's too much money in circulation, it causes inflation. Prices rise. And principle 10, society faces short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. This used to be true. I think it's kind of changed now in 2023 and 2024. What I mean by that is we saw inflation go up and unemployment kind of stayed the same. Typically, when inflation goes up, unemployment also goes up in the short run. So looking a little deeper at these 10 principles, people face trade-offs. You came to class today instead of working. The trade-off is you gave up an hour of work, an hour of wages to be here with me for an hour. So how you allocate your time, that's a trade-off. How parents spend their time, also a trade-off. Societal trade-offs include things like national defense versus consumer spending, clean environment versus a higher income, efficiency, overall quality. These are all trade-offs that we face. Efficiency is the idea that we are maximizing our potential. We're maximizing our ability to produce our goods and services, and we're good at it. That's efficient. We're making everything at the right time, right size, right place. Efficient. Equality is the idea that wealth is distributed accordingly. Yep. Distributing economic prosperity across all members of society. That's what we call equality. That's the idea behind equality. We know that that's, nice to have, or some people think it's impossible. It depends in the society that you're in. But equality is the idea that everything gets an equal slice of the pie. Efficiency and equality, however, they're trade-offs. Usually we're either efficient or we're equal, but you were usually never both at the same time. Okay. So we have things in place to try to balance things out, to make things a little bit more equal. How do you do that? We have things like a welfare system, unemployment insurance, income taxes, and these things help to make things a little bit more equal, ultimately. We recognize that people face trade-offs between efficiency and equality. That second principle we mentioned is what we call the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is what you give up to obtain something else. So in this example of you, the student, being in the classroom with me for an hour, the trade-off is the hour of wages that you gave up to be here. Yeah, that's the opportunity cost. The third principle, as I mentioned, was that rational people think at the margin. Rational people, that's kind of a relative term. But the idea here is that everyone is working to achieve their objectives. That's what rational people do. We establish goals and objectives and we try to achieve them. Yeah, standard. We make marginal changes. The word marginal means incremental, small adjustments. Okay? People are typically rational. We make small adjustments where needed. The only time we take major action is when the marginal benefits outweigh the marginal costs. So, for example, you made a small change in your life to be here today. The marginal benefit is that you're going to earn your degree. That outweighs the marginal cost. You see, because the degree that you earn today the degree you will earn from us will give you greater benefit in the long run over the marginal cost. So just a couple of random examples, but I personally like that example better than these ones. Principle 4, people respond to incentives. If you pay them, they will do the work. That's incentive, right? The incentives kind of go along with supply and demand. The idea behind supply and demand is that when the price of something is higher, people buy less of it. The demand goes down when the price is high. When the price is low, demand goes up. Pretty straightforward. Public policy also can be incentives as well. Changes in costs and benefits. Incentives to wear your seatbelt, besides it being a law, is to protect your life. Principle 5, trade makes everyone better off. When we exchange goods and services, it makes the people selling the goods and buying the goods better off. Yeah, straightforward. Principle 6, markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. We like to group like things together. When you group like things together, that's how you organize, right? It's kind of like if you look at your desk. I have a basket for my pens and pencils. I group them together because they're like items and keep things clean, tidy. Yeah. So I group like things together. Therefore, it is organized. We do the same thing with the economy. We group like goods and services together. We look at how much is produced, who's producing it, and who's buying it. Markets can be communistic, centralistic, market economy. There's a lot of different other types of economies out there. But the idea here is that with a communistic economy, everything's pretty much distributed evenly. With a market economy, it's decentralized. So there is competition for goods and services, and prices help to guide this activity. Market economies are really the most efficient way of running a country, and they are a lot more successful than a communistic one. And the reason for that is because when the buyers and sellers do well, everyone does well. Okay. I'm not going to go over the Adam Smith thing. Principle 7. Governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Yeah, sometimes. Example, when inflation runs high, the government increases the interest rates to get people to borrow less. When people borrow less, there's less money in the economy. It reduces, which will ultimately brings inflation back down. When inflation goes back down, we reduce the interest rates. We're seeing that today in 2024. In fact, we'll probably see an interest rate adjustment next month. Property rights is a big factor. People own property, so it's important to protect those. Market failures, we try to prevent market failures by intervening. The government will intervene. Externalities are outside implications on our economy, like pollution and other actions by other people outside the economy. Market power, a government might interject when one group of companies has too much power. An example of that would be right now with high tech, so like Google, Microsoft, Apple, maybe. The larger tech companies that control a lot of the power, the government tries to intervene sometimes by breaking them up, which we might be seeing sometime with Google relatively soon. And of course, the government also intervenes when there's a need for public policy to help any type of diminishing returns or inequalities. Principle 8 is the country's standard of living depends on the ability to produce goods and services. The more that we produce and the more efficient we are at producing, the better off our overall economy is. This also explains why there's certain quantities of goods and services over others. Higher productivity, the higher the standard of living is, and the growth rate is also higher for that country. Principle 9 has to do with when prices rise, because the government prints too much money. That's what caused inflation starting in 2020-ish through 2022. And now we're paying for it over the past 2 years. So when the government prints too much money, it causes inflation. That's what happens. More money there is, the less the value is per dollar. And principle 10 is when society faces a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. This used to be true. It's still true for this course, but the way this works is when inflation is high, unemployment is usually high. When inflation is low, unemployment is usually low in the short run. In the long run, things tend to even out over time. It flattens out. And the last part about this is business cycles fluctuate with economic activity. And that, my friends, is a quick and easy synopsis of the 10 principles of economics. So what I'd like you to do for this week, since today is Wednesday, tomorrow is Thursday already, we started the semester today. So what I'd like you to do is in the classroom in week 1, I want you to go to Engage and Explore. And I want you to have your original discussion board post of 150 words with citations and references if you can. I'd like to have that by tomorrow night. I know it's quick, right? But remember, this is a short week. So having said that, I want your original post by tomorrow night, Thursday night, okay? And then respond to 2 of your classmates with 100 words each by Sunday night. Okay, so that's action item number 1 that you have starting tomorrow. Action item number 2 for this week, under action and expression, is your quiz for chapter 1. Do we have to get citations? I'm sorry, I just missed that. Hold on just 1 second. We have to get citations from the chapter we read. Great question, India. And I would like to say yes, ideally, that would be good. Or you can just reference the textbook. Okay, just a simple, in-text citation. Hey, this is the page I found this on. And then at the end of your post, just a quick reference for the textbook. Good question. So yeah, ideally. Hopefully that helps answer your question. Great. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns before we call it a night? I'm sorry, we're 4 minutes over, but we're close. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
All right. Take your time, Pastor. Take your time, Pastor.
Thank you, Len. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know it seems a little bit busy. These first weeks are always always a little bit more than we anticipate, right? So, um, is there anything that you can think of that maybe I didn't talk about this very first day? Any burning questions? Otherwise, we're going to meet on Monday, of course. Oh, I should have mentioned that. This course is technically scheduled for every Monday and Wednesday. We're not doing that. Okay, we're going to just do on Mondays for the lecture, on Mondays. Wednesday, I want you to use that class time to complete the work for that week. All right. Reason why is because it helps you to be more efficient. It helps you to stay on top of the work in this class, and it gives you time to actually focus. All right. The chapters are not very long, but they are very specific. And so I'll do my best every Monday to deliver a solid lecture for each chapter of that week and answer any of your questions. Wednesday, I want you to take the time to really do the work and to focus on the work. And I think that will make you a more efficient student in this class, and I think it'll also help all of us. So that's my proposal for this course. And I think we could do it. I've done it that way several times before, and it's been really successful. And I think we could do it again here. And of course, I'm always going to be here for you. So if you ever need anything, you got my cell phone, you got my email, you got me. Okay. So use me as a resource, because I promise you I'll be there to help you no matter what. Okay. So that's my promise to all of you. Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Thank you all so much for your time today. I really do appreciate all of you being here. Please keep showing up. It's good for all of us. And thank you again. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate your efforts. I look forward to your great work this week and for the next 15 weeks. Thanks again. Have a great night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Have a
Lon.
great one.
Thank you too. Thank you. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Have a good night, Doc.
You too. Good to see you. Good night. Take care.